Hello and welcome to GariTalks. I'm Gary. My pronouns are they, daddy, D-A-D-D-I-E, and unk. I'm a warrior, wordsmith, educator, facilitator, social emotional strategist. I really enjoy cultivating spaces for folks to come together to chat, to listen, to share their experiences. So today I wanted to talk about my vision for the month and also just kind of my vision in general. I'm also figuring out this like scripting situation because I think it's very valuable to script my videos so that I can like be on track. But I also noticed that my writing voice and reading voice is different than my just general speaking voice. So figuring out how exactly I want to go about it. What's been helpful right now is just journaling and then kind of like having the notes of the journal in front of me so I have reference point, but like pretty much more or less speaking then from my head. I also want to like create subtitles, so that's why I was trying to use a script. We working on the things. Slowly it's developing. So what I first wrote down was just like my greatest interest lies in dialogue. I love talking and have for my entire life, hence the name. Right, like all my report cards were like Gary is so brilliant and like always doing they work and yes and sis cannot stop talking. Like, can someone please get a muscle? So I love talking and taking up a lot of space is something that I'm actually working on and learning to do less of. Like doing a balance of like speaking my mind and taking up space when it is like, take up space, but also remembering, because I have this tendency to like take up space, remembering that other people don't have the same tendency. And also when you're in front of people who usually don't take up space and you take up a lot of space, you'll also end up usually just creating a space where they don't feel that they can take up space, right? Because if it's something you're practicing, it's important to have someone who will support you in that. So what I'm learning is like to take up less space and encourage other folks to take up more space and to listen. So it's funny. I think about a lot of things and I attribute meaning to a lot of things. It can be kind of crazy making a little bit, and I will share more on those experiences of like how reframing is really powerful, and it can also get crazy inside your head if you're constantly trying to reframe everything. But this is just something that's funny. When I was little and like before 1 year old, so I was just back from the hospital. I was gonna say the airport from the hospital. I was 4 days late. I had jaundice. I was really ill. I was there for like 2 weeks to a month. I have to ask my mom to double check. And when I came home, they thought I couldn't hear. For a long time, a lot of tests, all these things, and I just wouldn't respond to sound until one day a door like slammed and I started crying, and my mom like was very grateful. So I think that's interesting that I literally couldn't hear for the beginning of my life, and like something that I definitely am working on is holding space to listen more, which is why I love having a YouTube channel because it's dedicated to talking. I like having a workshop because I get to speak and like hold space, and I'm also learning to like I want to create dialogue spaces where I'm not necessarily speaking so much, but I'm facilitating and just letting things happen. Because I realized the best time for me to practice listening and where I listen the most is when I have brought people together and I listen to them talk. So for instance, yesterday, a friend of mine met some of my family members for the first time. And like, I was doing my own thing and just listening to their interaction, listening to their conversation. Because I'm like, obviously, since we're all here, there's work that is being done. There's something that's happening for all of us to be sharing. Oh, we're all kind of in this similar moment, or like we're going through similar feelings. I just think that's really powerful, and being able to listen that way was really cool. I love challenging conversations. I used to really think that meant I love drama, right? Because there's also, let's be real, like I used to love drama. It's what I grew up with. I had a lot of emotional strife from my parents or from my mother, and her witnessing her relationships and friends and all that shit. So like, and them too, they used to fight. So like, drama was a language I was very well versed in. So I've learned and I've noticed that there's a difference between like being like, something you said made me uncomfortable and I'm gonna speak on it, and being like, I don't like how you said that to me, and then now, and I don't like the way you took off your shoes over there and the way you slammed the door, right? Because we can have these conversations too, but I think it's also very much how we approach the conversation. And are we being nitpicky? Are we experiencing a disturbance in our spirit that we're just conveying? How are we conveying this information, right? And I think it often made me feel like, I feel like I think it's, for me, whenever I want to speak on something, I'm not necessarily emotionally moved by the thing. So if someone says something, for instance, that makes me uncomfortable, or touches me in a way that makes me uncomfortable, before I would be triggered and be like, how dare you, like, like, you're so inconsiderate, right? But, like, I've really come to a place where if someone's touched me or done something that makes me feel uncomfortable, I'll sit and be like, I'm uncomfortable right now. And I have come to learn to be like, hey, so I want to tell you, earlier when you did this, I noticed that my energy started shifting because I felt uncomfortable. So I'm here now telling you that I feel uncomfortable about that. And it could be something minute, right? And I think what's really interesting is even when I express it in that way, some people are like, oh, you're making a big deal out of whatever. I'm like, I'm not telling you to take it on, right? I'm just saying, when you said that, when I saw this, when I saw you move with that person in that way, when I felt this, when I heard this, I had this experience, and I'm just sharing that with you. And that's something I realized I really value. Like, this is a intimate share. I was having this conflict with my father once, where we were going back and forth, all of this stuff, and I was telling him about how I hated college. He's like, if you hated it so much, why'd you stay? And I was like, because, like, what was I supposed to do? Drop out and be a failure? And he was like, what? Like, graduating and not doing anything isn't failing? And I was like, did you just call me a failure? And he was like, what? Why are you playing these games with me? And I was like, what? Are we speaking the same language? Because if we're talking deductively, I just said that I wouldn't leave because I thought that would make me a failure. And you said, so you graduating and then not doing anything doesn't make you a failure? Because that's where I was. So how are you not calling me a failure, right? And we're here in this moment of reverberating with each other. And he's like, I'm not playing these mind games with you or whatever. And then he stepped away. And when he came back, he was like, that's not what I was saying. That's not what I was intending to say when I said that. And then he was able to address, like, I had all these feelings of other stuff for him. It feels intimate to share. He's sharing, like, my dad's presence in my life growing up was varied, limited. And so he was sharing how a lot of the time he feels guilty because he feels like his absence is why I'm kind of here now doing and struggling in the ways that I am. So, like, we're coming into this conversation with our own shit. And so me coming, and the reason I brought up that story is just, like, thinking about making everything a thing. Like, people think I'm like, oh, you're so annoying about language. When you said that, it triggered a lot of feelings for me because I do feel like a failure at the time. And now and not so much. But, like, I really did feel like a failure at the time. And I felt like he felt like I was a failure, right? And then realizing when we actually unpack the conversation, he feels like a failure. And being like, it's just interesting how that all came out. Right? And I think a lot of the time it's important to walk away from conversations and, like, we can put a pin on this, right? Things are getting emotional, things are getting heated, and I really appreciate my father for having walked away. Like, he's like, bro, I'm not talking about this right now. Right? And then stepped away and took a break and then came back. There's a true power in giving space and being able to come back to a conversation. There's also a true power in finishing a conversation, right? And being able to, we've brought up all these things, because and where we were was that he said the stuff about failure. He wasn't ready to admit his own reason for bringing up the concept of failure, or, like, his own experiences with failure. I had just said a thing that I was receiving, right? And he could have just knocked him back. He could have just been like, that's a personal ass problem. Ain't nobody said that. He could have felt his feelings about whatever and just not shared it with me, right? That it could have gone a lot of different ways. And I think in the pause, he was able to, like, think about his own stuff and then sit down and be like, ugh, well, this is what I was trying to say, right? Because we're all the way over here now. Like, what I was trying to say was something entirely different. Like, how did we get here? Or, like, why did we get here? I'm mad that we're here. This is all kind of rambles and me just, this is why we need a script. But I'm really reflecting on how personal it is that we take things, right? So if somebody says the way what you did makes, like, I feel uncomfortable about what you did, instead of understanding that somebody is just sharing the impact of an experience that they've had, we start being like, it's like, oh shit, I should have known better. Like, I fucked up. Oh, now they're thinking that and it's all of these horrible thoughts that we're actually feeling about ourselves. And now we can't even hold space for what that person is saying because you're too busy going through your own things. And I wrote down here, I think one of the most narcissistic things I do is thinking that things, especially bad things, are about me. So I think it's pretty narcissistic to think that other people are constantly thinking about you. And that's something that I never really realized that I did until I was like, oh shit, I really do that. Like, for instance, somebody not texting you. For somebody to not be texting you because they don't fuck with you, and you thinking that, like, you're thinking that every time they see your name in their phone, they're ignoring you, is a pretty large seat to take for yourself in somebody else's world. When very likely the case is that they're busy, that they're doing other things, and it has nothing to do with you. And I think that's one of the most toxic things I have learned about trying to anticipate people's response and realizing that that's a trauma response for me because I was always trying to anticipate my mom, right? Like if I said a particular thing or if I did a particular thing, there would be a consequence. I would get in trouble for it. So sometimes I've noticed that when people feel uncomfortable or when people are expressing upset with me, or, you know, you did this thing and it hurt my feelings, or they're not responding, I tend to start thinking, okay, what are all the wrong things I have done? What could I have done wrong in this situation for us to be here? Versus like giving someone the benefit of the doubt, because I'm projecting all of my insecurities onto them. And also realizing a lot of the time it's funny how it's actually my stuff anyway. Like, for instance, like, oh, you know, they're looking at the message and then they're not even like responding. I do that. I will open messages, read them, and then like, oh, and then get lost in the other thing, right? It's not because like, oh, fuck this person. But like, it's funny that when I do it, I don't think it's fuck this person, but when someone does it to me, it feels like, oh, fuck this person, right? And so that's like when there's a moment to reflect. I was writing also here, right, I was thinking if somebody says, like, for instance, like, I need alone time because I need to recharge, it's funny how we often take that as, oh, so I'm draining. Or like, you know, if someone's like, I need some time away for myself, we're like, oh, because I'm annoying, so you need time away. And that's like, I think, very narcissistic. I think that's also very toxic. And it's like, it's toxic because your self-moving, self-worth, self-esteem, thoughts about self are tied up in this other person's actions. Like, a person's going to recharge because they need to recharge. And that has nothing to do with you. If it feels like it has something to do with you, then you got to address the parts that have to do with you, right? It's not narcissistic, or it's not I'm not advocating for the narcissistic, like, so you got to figure out, like, how you are draining them. No. However, if you feel a way about being draining to another person, you probably need to think about, how do you feel drained? What drains you? How is your experience with being drained? Who respects your boundaries around that? And in what ways do you act draining? Right? And not in a, like, shit on yourself way, but like, oh, when I incessantly ask questions, that can be draining, right? When I don't give people space to talk, it can be very draining. And so now I'm in a different space where I can notice if you're saying, oh, I need time to recharge, and I'm feeling like, oh shoot, is it because of me? I can think about the parts that are me. I can understand that this has to do with you, and then we can be good. So this is like a very long-winded video to say, like, I love dialogue. So I want to bring up just my experience with things. So with race, I want to bring up my experience with love, my experience with family, my experience with romantic relationships, my experience with friendly, familial, platonic relationships, sexual relationships, history. I just want to bring up my experience because I've learned, I'm not feeling a way about it anymore. It is what it is. It's my experience. I have made sense of it in the ways that I have made sense of it, and I want to share that now. And so I want to share that with you all. And I would love for you all to engage back in a conversation. I want to create dialogue spaces where we can come together, so it's not me speaking to you, at you, right? And there's no chance for response aside from in a comment. I want to create a space where we can talk live time. That is all part of the vision for this time. I just feel like I don't think conversations can fix everything, because harm is not just addressed through conversation. It's like the best apology is change behavior, right? So it's actually not very much about the words. And I think there's a power and an importance in being able to And being able to hold space for opinions that aren't your own. And then also, I think it's just so powerful to come together and be heard. Like, to me, conflict is simply the difference of needs, right? So I often give the example, like, a child has a need to explore and a parent has a need to protect, and those needs are now at odds, right? And instead of compromising, which often, if you think prefix compromise, it just don't sound right, like somebody losing out on something. There's some kind of like, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry was like, we're both unhappy, so it's a great compromise. Like, no, it's not how we want it. I want to create collaboration, right? So if a child has a need to explore and a parent has a need to protect, instead of being like, no, you can't go outside, it's like, you can go outside and I'm going to explain to you that these are the bounds that I feel comfortable with, right? And why? Because if you step outside of this, there's the street. You could get hit by a car, right? And maybe not even saying that, but there is, I cannot protect you beyond these bounds, right? And if we want to go out there, maybe we can go, but let me go with you, right? Or like, I don't feel comfortable with you doing this. Would you be comfortable doing something else? What else would you feel comfortable doing? Like, and it's hard to say, right? I'm giving hypothetical conversation and questions, so it's really hard to come to a collaboration point with hypotheticals, I would say, because people need to be there to speak their truth and their experience and what they need. But I think it takes so much more time to do it this way. It takes so much more capacity, so much more compassion to really sit and be like, I'm going to listen to your shit. Because I think we've come to a point where we're like, I don't want to hear nothing if it fucks with my peace, like, I'm not going to hear that. Yeah, protect your peace. And also, like, how can we protect our peace and also create win-wins and collaboration in a world that is very conflict ridden? Like, how do we do that? That's the question that's really driving a lot of my work. What is love, right? What is love in a world that loves hate, or that, thrives on hate and spews it out in violence? Yeah, I want us to be able to come in and take this moment of like, this is mine, this is yours, or that's yours, right? And this is shared. This is what is shared, and this is also what is irrelevant now. And I say this like I'm speaking very generally, right? Because this is a model that I've used in my like family life and my romantic relationships, but like I want to do this on a national scale. I would love for us. I love Joyner Lucas's video, I'm Not a Racist, where he has that like a black man and a white man wearing like a Trump hat, like showing them having this really intense and aggressive conversation, which ultimately ends with like the point that I took away from it is like, we don't understand each other, and there's a lot of fucking feelings about it, and there's a lot of reasons for us to feel the ways that we feel. Absolutely, there's so many valid reasons and experiences for me to feel the way I feel on both ends. And like, both ends don't see the other side because it's fucked up. Because if we're being honest, white supremacy and colonizers done fucked up by doing the shits in the first place. The shit is wicked, right? But again, because we keep taking things personally, we can't even have a conversation about racism with a lot of white folks, because folks think white privilege and white supremacy and racism is a personal thing about them, without understanding that, no, we're talking about legacy, we're talking about patterns, right? So decenter yourself. It's not about you particularly. It's about us having a larger conversation about why we're here, right? The reason you're upset about me calling you white and this is for the same reason that I'm calling you white, and that I'm upset about black stuff, or about you being over here not understanding blackness, because whiteness was created to oppose itself from other things. So now when I call you that and you're upset, it doesn't make sense for us, right? And like, I've learned, and from personal experience, when our paradigm is like challenged and confused, we get hostile, we get defensive. Like, I had a moment with somebody yesterday where she said that she was 5'4". I'm 5'6". From everywhere I've been in my life, I've been 5'6". right? Like on my license, I think it says like between 5'5" and 5'6". My mom has been 5'5" for most of my life, and I know I'm an inch taller than her because I'm just a slightly bit taller than her. So to me, I'm 5'6", right? So this person's telling me, they asked how tall I was, we compared, and then they were like, "No, you're not 5'6", and I was like, "What? How you gonna tell me that I'm not 5'6", right?" And she was like, "Because I'm 5'4". So, and we initially got into this moment of being very tense, and I was like, "Listen, we're here in feelings, but I want to tell you like what is happening for me in this conversation, right? Let me just break it down for you so that we can understand why things are escalating in this way." How I feel about this is that we're both at equivalent value points of our opinion. You get what I'm saying? I think I'm 5'6", you think you're 5'4". Both of these things are valid because we have had a lifetime of experiences that have confirmed this for us, right? So for us now to come into interaction and it is clear that somebody is not, because she's taller than me. So like it's clear that either I'm 5'4" and you're 5'6", or I'm 5'6" and you're 5'7", right? And so, or I'm 5'3" and you're 5'4". So we're both coming into this, we're both incorrect, right? Because we're clearly here where something is not adding up. And there's nothing to confirm because I don't have a measuring tape or nothing. But for you to come in and be like, no, your shit has to change because I'm grounded in my shit. That's what I was like, you see, that part is confusing to me. It makes no sense. Because I could do the same thing and be like, your shit is wrong. However, that's not how I'm responding to you. I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, next time I go to the doctor, I'm going to have to check that out. I'm not like, oh, no, like, that just means that you're not 5'4", you're 5'7", like, duh. Because I think there's such an importance in letting people come to discover things, Inception type style. Like, when it comes from them, it makes so much more sense and resonates a lot deeper. So, yeah. I just think that was a conversation that I had with a friend that was just like, it was really tense. And it was a potential, and it was funny being with this person and seeing such a mirror because it was really a moment where we could have, in legacy, my narrative, someone could have walked out, or it could have become a fight, or somebody would have shut down. And there's so many ways it could have gone, and instead it flowed tense, and then we talked about the things, and then we were able to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I felt like this, you felt like that, and etc. So that's my goal. With a focus on intergenerational healing, on history, and on gratitude, for the month of November, because I think history is so important. You gotta know, like I was saying with the Joyner, I'm kind of all over the place, with the Joyner Lucas video, and also with my friend, like understanding how we have been spoken to before. What are the stories that we're coming into this with? That's why history is important, right? And then intergenerational shit is important because that's how it gets passed along, how the past continues to play itself out, how it keeps cycling forward. That's the part, right? And then gratitude, I feel like, is where it can transform, because I don't want to say stop, but yeah, where the cycle can be broken, and lessons can be learned, and new outcomes can come about because we are taking this moment to break the cycle and like choose to do something different. So thank you all for listening. I was really spitting just off the dome with some guidance. I hope it makes sense. I should rewatch this, but today I'm just gonna post this because I'm feeling honest. So yeah, enjoy your day.